Hey everybody, I want to talk about something today that I don't think I've ever talked about on this channel before, and that is Paul McCartney drumming on Beatles songs. Now, of course, Ringo Starr was the Beatles drummer and one of the best drummers of all time. He's definitely one of my favorite drummers, and within the Beatles, about 90% of the recordings feature Ringo on drums. But there are a few occasions where Paul McCartney would fill in for Ringo on drums, or he would be playing drums while Ringo was doing something else during the backing track recording. So I wanted to talk about all the songs that Paul plays drums on, and there are a few that I know are a bit controversial because there's been some new information that's come to light in the last few years based off of the box sets that have come out, the Super Deluxe Edition box sets, that now list Paul on drums where we didn't think he was playing drums before. So first off, let's talk about the most obvious songs that Paul plays drums on. And these are songs from the White Album. So the White Album is really where Paul started really coming into his own as far as like drumming on Beatles sessions. And the way this started, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this, but if you're not, I'll tell the quick story. During the White Album sessions, their tensions were running high, and at one point, Ringo left the Beatles during the White Album recording. He thought that he wasn't drumming very well. He thought the others didn't really like him. All that proved to be not true, of course. So, but in the meantime, he went away. He went to go hang out with his friend Peter Sellers on Peter Sellers' boat. And while he was away, the Beatles recorded. There goes Bob, by the way, running very fast in the background. While Ringo was away, the Beatles continued recording songs, and the two songs that they worked on while he was away, the first song was Back in the USSR. So Back in the USSR features Paul on drums. It also features John and George on drums as well. And on this Super Deluxe Edition box set, you can hear an early take of the backing track of Back in the USSR. And it's very obvious that George is playing just a snare drum while Paul and John, I think, are playing probably like piano and guitar. But George is playing the snare drum, keeping the time with the snare drum. So George is definitely playing snare drum on Back in the USSR. But Paul is playing the main kit, is what I would call it. So he's doing all the fills and playing the main groove. And it definitely works for that song. And then the next song on the White Album, by the way, Back in the USSR is the opening track on the White Album, as I'm sure a lot of you know. And then the next song that goes right from Back in the USSR, it goes right into Dear Prudence. A little Bob edit there. And then the next song on the album is Dear Prudence, and it's a song that Paul also plays drums on. And in my opinion, this is his finest drumming performance within his drumming on the Beatles. He really sounds amazing on Dear Prudence. The fills he does are just excellent. And actually, he sounds a lot like Ringo on here, in my opinion. So Back in the USSR and Dear Prudence are two songs on the White Album that Paul famously has played drums on, and that's been known for a very long time. But with the release of this Super Deluxe Edition box set, it has come to light that Paul also plays drums on Ringo's song Don't Pass Me By. Now, for the longest time, I always thought it was Ringo playing drums on Don't Pass Me By, and I always thought the drums were a little bit different. They were a little bit un-Ringo-like, I always thought, but I assumed, wrongly of course, but I assumed that they weren't quite as precise because Ringo was singing his vocal while playing the drums at the same time, which might be kind of hard to do. That has now proven to not be true at all, and it turns out that Paul is playing drums on Don't Pass Me By, while Ringo is playing piano. So for the backing track, you have Paul on drums and Ringo on piano, which makes sense because Ringo wrote the song and he wrote it on piano, so it makes sense that he would play the song on piano as well. And it also makes sense that the drums aren't quite as precise and aren't quite as rock solid, steady as we're used to hearing from a Beatles song. But they work for the song because it's kind of a loose country swing or whatever. And Paul does a good job on drums on that for sure. So Don't Pass Me By is another White Album song that Paul plays drums on. And then there are two other songs as well on the White Album that Paul is playing drums on. But they are not the full drum kit. It's just like little bits of drums. So the first one is the song Wild Honey Pie. Now, Wild Honey Pie is, it probably gets the vote with Revolution number 9 as one of the least played songs off the White Album. It's definitely just an experimental piece, Wild Honey Pie. It's just Paul playing everything. He's playing a bunch of acoustic guitars. He's like hitting a guitar, and he's also playing what sounds to me like either a kick drum or like a floor tom or something. So he is playing drums on that, but it's not really officially a full drum kit. But gotta give him credit because he is definitely playing drums on Wild Honey Pie. And then the other song that he's also playing, he's playing a kick drum on, is Mother Nature's Son. On Mother Nature's Son, in the very intro, you hear the kick drum happening. I don't know why I did that, because with the kick drum you use your foot. But he definitely is playing the kick drum on Mother Nature's Son as well. So those are 5 songs from the White Album where Paul is playing the drums. Now, the next time that we have Paul appearing on drums, it was on a single the Beatles released, The Ballad of John and Yoko, backed with Old Brown Shoe. Now, The Ballad of John and Yoko, it's been known for a long, long time that Paul was playing drums on that song. And the story behind that is that John had just written the song, The Ballad of John and Yoko, and he really wanted to record it as quickly as possible. And at the time, I believe George Harrison was in the hospital getting his tonsils out. I believe that's true. He was definitely in the hospital, not feeling well, so he wasn't able to attend the session. And Ringo at the time was filming the movie The Magic Christian. So the only Beatles available to record were John and Paul. So John went to Paul's house, showed him the song. They booked the session at Abbey Road, and Paul plays drums on the song while John was playing acoustic guitar. And there is a fantastic outtake on the Abbey Road Super Deluxe Edition box set, where you can hear them recording one of the backing tracks for Ballad of John and Yoko, and they do a funny exchange where John says something like, play a little bit faster, Ringo, and Paul responds with, okay, George. Just a funny little Beatle humor there. But Paul, again, on Ballad of John and Yoko, plays some amazing drums, and even Ringo himself was quoted as saying, great drums on that track. And I totally agree. I think it's probably my second favorite drumming performance as far as what Paul did with the Beatles. But another revelation is on the B-side, George Harrison's song, Old Brown Shoe, Paul is also playing drums on that song. And what I think is so fascinating about that is that I always, for the longest time, I thought that was Ringo playing drums. It sounds like Ringo to me, but in the book for this box set, Kevin Howlett, he lists Paul as playing drums, and he says the reason why they state Paul is playing drums on Old Brown Shoe is that during the recording session, they say that Ringo was filming again for The Magic Christian. So he wasn't available to add drums on Old Brown Shoe. Now, in Mark Lewison's book, which, by the way, this is one of the best Beatle books around, this is called The Beatles, The Complete Beatles Chronicle, and this is a combination of 2 of his books. So this lists all of their recording sessions and their live performances and the TV shows and filming for all their movies. Goes through their whole career. But in this book, for the recording sessions part, he talks about the Old Brown Shoe recording, and he lists Ringo as drumming on the song. And he lists that Ringo, I believe what he says is that Ringo showed up either after he was filming or in between filming, and was able to add his drums to Old Brown Shoe. Now, I kind of think that now that I've listened to the session outtake on the Abbey Road Deluxe Edition and the single, it does kind of sound like Paul is drumming on Old Brown Shoe. So I'm kind of on the fence, but I'm leaning towards, I do believe that it is Paul drumming on Old Brown Shoe. And I believe the reason why I think that is true is because with Abbey Road, the deluxe edition, they had access to all the original recording session tapes, and they really did, I think they did thorough research. It seems like they did. And I'm sure based off of the session tapes, they found out that it was Paul on drums. So we're going to go with Paul playing drums on Old Brown Shoe, which is a little bit of a revelation, I would say. Now, the other songs I wanted to mention, there are a couple of honorable mention songs here that Paul adds drums to. The song Strawberry Fields Forever, Ringo is playing drums throughout that. He is the drummer playing the full kit. but there are some drum, like kind of additional drum parts that are happening during their like kind of freak out in the outro. The drums start playing like a double time thing, and Paul is playing a floor tom while Ringo is also playing the main kit. So Paul is playing some drums on Strawberry Fields Forever, but Ringo, again, is the main drummer on that song for sure. And I should say there is another honorable mention that I should talk about. So there is a version, an early version of something that they recorded at the same time they were working on Old Brown Shoe. So during that same session, they also worked on an earlier version of something, like I was saying, and Paul does play drums on that version as well. Now that version's not available on this box set, but I believe it is available out there in the bootleg world. So that does exist out there. And there are some other instances where Paul is adding a few bits of percussion on drums as well. I know there are photos of Paul, I'll probably put that right here. There's photos of the Beatles working on the song You Know My Name, Look Up the Number. And there's, again, Paul is standing next to Ringo on the drum kit, playing other bits of the drum kit while Ringo is also playing. So it's possible that Paul is also featured on You Know My Name, Look Up the Number as well on drums. So Paul was just an amazing, still is by the way, an amazing all-around musician, and of course in his solo work he played drums as well. On the McCartney album, Paul is playing drums. All the drums, in fact, on McCartney album are Paul. All the drums on the Band on the Run album with Wings, that's Paul playing drums as well. On his McCartney 2 album, he's playing drums. So there's been many times in his career where Paul has played drums and sounds great. He's obviously he'll forever be just one of the top bass players of all time, especially from the 1960s. But I certainly think his drumming is definitely underrated. I think he's a great drummer, a solid drummer, and hopefully this video maybe revealed a few things to you that you didn't know before. Maybe you knew all this information already, and it's just something to refresh your memory. What I like to do, by the way, just a little side note, is it's fun for me to on my computer, on iTunes or Spotify or whatever you use, you can make a playlist, and which I have done for myself, of all the songs that Paul plays drums on. So you can hear like a all Paul drumming Beatles playlist, which is kind of fun to do sometimes. Anyway, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope you're all doing well. Take care, and bye for now.